right, so we're going live, and then I will just monitor it on the other screen once I'm sure we've gone live, and then I'm sure we've gone live, then okay. Yeah. Okay, so we've gone live. Let me just monitor it here. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so we're live. All right, so we have a minute to go. So we'll just hang in there a little for. Okay, so we're live. Okay, 1 second. So I'm not echoing back to myself. You know, these things make you become a mini studio. All manner of gadgets and connections and what have you. And I had to call in somebody the other day to help me look at the lights. I had lights, and yet everything was still dark. And the young man came and, you know, helped me to point the lights directly, and boom, it's all bright and sunny, no matter what's happening outside.
Very soon, you need to have that team. Once you do the
yes.
help you, just come, sit down, and go on with it.
Okay. All right, so it's 8 o'clock and we're good to go. Thank you so much. So welcome everybody to the Pastors Roundtable. PRT, as I like to call it, is a forum for pastors to come together to have life-giving conversations that edify the body and glorify the Lord. My name is Noruwa, and I'm your host. And I always like to say this at the beginning, that the views expressed in this program are those of the speakers. So just in case you know me in another platform, I represent Noruwa Edopolo, pure and simple, okay? So welcome. Today we're excited to be joined by some of the most important women in Nigeria, the wives of ministers. I'm hoping that, you know, through this conversation tonight, we can gain some insights into how the family life, you know, has been impacted by the work of ministry. Remember, this program really is for pastors. We try to bring forward those conversations that would help us to do what God has called us to do better. Now, the work of ministry is tougher today, I believe, than it has ever been. All right, we are dealing with new and diverse issues. I mean, this generation has to contend with the information gateway, new age thinking, secularism, financial pressure, politics, hypersexuality, and on and on and on. And today our topic is hearing from the horse's mouth. We want to focus on the impact of ministry on the family. And so I want to borrow a leaf from our topic. Ordinarily, I would read the profiles of my guests, but today I'd like them one by one to introduce themselves. And this is how I want us to do it. So you tell us your name, tell us your denomination, tell us your vocation, and then you tell us something you desire to do, but you haven't quite done it yet. All right? Something you desire to do, but you haven't quite done it yet. So for example, my name is Noruwa. I'm Pentecostal. I'm your host. And something I would like to do that I haven't quite done yet is to play golf. All right? I've flirted with it. I've even gone for training, but somehow I haven't quite done it yet. So that's an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, so I think the first person to sign on was Mrs. Agumbiade. So she will go first, then Mrs. Abegunde, then Mrs. Atoyebi, and then Mrs. Oderinde, in that order. Your name, your denomination, your vocation, and something you would really want to do, but you haven't quite done it yet. So the floor is open. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Good evening, everyone. So excited to be here. And thank you, Pastor Noruwa, for the opportunity to be part of this team. Initially, I wish that you had gone round first. So things I have in mind that I love to do, so I'm like, which one would you pick? Which one would you pick of all? Anyway, my name is Omonwumi Agumbiade. and I pastor alongside my husband, who is a pastor in the Redeemed Christian Church of God. I'm an educator by profession. Sometimes I just love to call myself a teacher. So I run a school for children between the age group 0 to 11. I also work with teachers and their parents. Now, something that I love to do, that I would love to do, that I'm yet to really do is, I love art a lot. So I love to dance. I really, really would love to just develop that skill in dancing, like join a dance group and just enjoy dancing. And then one thing that I really would love to do also is painting and crocheting. I've started, I do some paintings and I do crochet. I learned that from my daughter, but it's something that I really would love to do at some time, and even have a little mini art studio where it's something that is so good for my mental health and my wellness. So that's
wonderful. Wonderful. Interesting. Yes. Who's next?
All right.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for the privilege to be on the round table this evening. My name is Tewo Bade Abegunde. My husband pastors a Baptist church, so I'm of the Baptist family. And I'm a business analyst, and I also run a vocational school, Royal Breed Technical and Vocational School, where we train young ones from their teen age to be independent, to be self-empowered. And what I would love to do, what I love to do, what my passion actually embrace that I've not been able to do is to run an orphanage. It's been there. It's a passion, but I'm yet to confirm if God really want me to go in that direction. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Interesting. Orphanage, crochet, art. All right. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Atoebi. You are muted, ma'am. You are muted. Yes, you need to unmute. Yes, okay.
Apologies. I muted myself because I didn't want any distractions. My name is Debola Atoebi. I am an educationist. I run a school for children called Heritage House Schools, and I'm also a teacher's teacher. I train teachers in the Montessori method of education for 0 to 6 years, and I've been doing that for over 20 years. When you talk about denomination, I don't like that word denomination. So I'm not going to go by any denomination, but I am a child of God, and I believe in the Pentecostal movement. That is what I would say. I've done Baptist, I've done Anglican, and I've done, Pentecostal. So I'm a child of God. That's all I would say. And something I would like to do that I haven't done, travel the world, particularly Asia. I haven't been to Asia. I've traveled to other places. Of course, I haven't been to Australia as well. So I would love to go to those places. I'm a bit concerned about the time of the flight, but I would love to travel to those places. And I also enjoy dancing. I would also like to tap into my creative side more as the Lord enables me.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Oderinde, we are aware that you have a challenge, but go ahead, if you can hear me. Oh, all right. Yes, when she does come back, we can. So today we are looking at, the impact of ministry on the family. And my very first question is, when your spouse was called into ministry, were you automatically called along with your spouse? Or did you expect, or did you say, no, let me go and ask God for myself? Let's start with that. Mr. Derrida, are you back with us? Hello, ma, are you back? You are muted, just in case you are trying to speak. Let's see if we can get her before we go into that question. Hello, Mr. Derrida, are you there?
Yes. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. So glad to have you. Please go ahead.
Okay,
Introduce
so good evening,
yourself.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the privilege.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you for the privilege you have given to me to join this program. I'm not taking it for granted. Thank you, sir. And to mommy, I love you so much. Thank you, ma. Okay, my name is Oluwafunke Oluwafumileye Dorcas Oderigbe. I'm a teacher. I'm a traditional. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, so I said I'm a teacher. I'm a traditional wedding compare, which means alaga duro, alaga joko. Okay, so I'm a reverend's wife. Okay, so I'm married to Reverend Abiodun Akikumi Olaiwola. Okay, I have 2 children, 2 beautiful girls. What again, Daddy? That's all.
What is, tell us something you desire to do, but you haven't done it yet.
Wow. Okay, my desire, okay, one thing that I'm here to, I desire to have that is that I want to have a motherless babies home. Hello,
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, so I want to have a motherless baby home or an orphanage home.
Okay, so you can see Mrs. Abegunde after now.
Okay.
Because she has the same desires also, all right? And I want to say a big thank you to folks who have joined us on YouTube. Thank you so much. And whilst we're at it, please like, share, subscribe to my channel. So I was asking the question, when your spouse was called into ministry, did you automatically, let's go? Or was it a case of, I know quite a few women who say to their husbands, is you they called or not me? So what was it like for you? Who wants to set the ball rolling for us?
I think we should have Pastor David. Seems like
No. Okay, I think I will start with Mrs. Abegunde. Yes, madam, what was it like for you?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I was in courtship for 5 years already. When my husband said, okay, I will resume seminary. And for me, we were already planning to get married. He was already working, he was managing our hospital, and I was ready for something else. But eventually, when he said it's time for ministry, I don't know what to say at first. So I have to pray personally. I have to ask God, okay, am I really ready for this? Do you want me to go into, because when he was asking me out, ministry was not mentioned. And we were there for 5 good years. 5 good years, although there are signs, markers, some small things. There are some handwritings on the wall that seems like possibly this guy could eventually. But as the Lord would have it, he got a job and he was doing fine. And so I was not thinking of ministry. He organized a program, like a crusade. So all I had on mind was, okay, we were going to have our business and we're going to use the money God would be giving us via the business to organize small programs like that. So eventually when ministry came up, I I have to. And eventually I just have to submit to God, to his will.
Okay. Yes, Mrs. Atoyebi, how was it?
Well, for me, it was completely different. I was young, in my early 20s. I had given my life to Christ even before my husband. So I was the spiritual one. And so when he eventually gave his life to Christ, I was glad. I was happy. You know, it was like, this is what I've always wanted, a man who has a heart for the things of God. So I encouraged him. Little did I realize what I was encouraging him to get into. And so he got deeper and deeper into the things of God. He developed this thirst, don't let me say he developed. God gave him a thirst and a longing for the word, for, knowing more about God. Unfortunately, he got involved with good people, good men of God who are deep into the word, and so because of that, he grew very rapidly. He started attending Bible classes. He would sit with his mentors far into the nights. They would talk about the Bible. I allowed him to do all of that because I felt, I wanted him to grow. But from things just spiral, don't let me say out of control, really. After that, following that, because of that thirst, because of the zeal, because of the hunger, he got involved with church. It wasn't long before he was, singled out as, there's potential in this person. Start leading Bible class, start, teaching this, start doing this. And because there was the depth of the word was there, he did very well. And before I knew what was happening, he overtook me. He overtook me, in the race, and he was like, slow down. I brought you into this thing. Slow down. But by that time, he was way gone. And so I had no choice than to follow. He was the one following, he overtook, and then I started following. And one thing led to the other. He got involved in church, got involved in church administration, Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship. I mean, before I knew what was going on, he started leading different groups, and we just went from there. So it wasn't a case of, maybe I should ask God, should I follow? Should I, do this? Should I not do that? It was just automatic. It was like gear was in automatic, and we just went on from there. It was evident that that was what God wanted. And so we just went on from there.
Mr. Kumbiadi?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Mine is almost, I don't want to say it's similar to Pastor Debo, but I grew up from the Muslim background. So of course, before I met my husband, I had encountered Christ. But I was going to one of these Pentecostal churches around. And then I met my husband, who was already in the Redeemed Christian Church of God. But of course, because I just gave my life to Christ, I was not fully deep into relationship with Christ. So it was in the Redeemed Christian Church of God where my husband actually invited me to. That was Ladipo Luwali then, that I gave my life to Christ. I remember that day he was sitting next to me with his younger sister, and he's like, excuse me, why is she going out? I thought she's been born again. But so because I was coming from a Muslim background, he was already in church, in Redeemed. The moment I gave my life to Christ at that time, I was fully, it was like I was hungry for God. And I remember that even before I met him, I used to say to my younger ones, because of the experience I've had in the world, and I would just pray and I would say to them, I'm going to end up marrying a pastor. I just thought that pastors are the best people in the world. They would not break my heart because I've been in a relationship with
Aren't we?
And I remember the day I knelt down and I said, God, give me a pastor. I want to marry a pastor. So it seems like I prayed him into ministry, because I remembered, of course, I joined the workforce. He was also working already in the church, but he was fully given to service. He never wanted the altar. He never. So, because I remembered when the pastor in church, I was nursing one of my children, then my second child, my son. I was home and they just came back to home and said, I'm not going to that church again. I'm like, what do you mean you're not going to church? What happened? He said, I don't know. I'm not just going to church. So I had to get in touch with the pastor. Like, I don't know what happened. He's coming from workers' meeting. And the pastor said, oh, now I understand. He's going to be there. Because that day he was called to say he was going on the altar. So it was more like I was spiritually prepared for ministry, because it was like I found love. And I'm like, this is all that I would want to do. So the moment he was on the altar, it was just like I was in sync to run along with him. So that's my story. Yeah.
Interesting. Mr. Derry, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. So tell us, what was your own case?
Oh, I think my own case is different from the three stories I've had. My own, I don't even want to marry a priest at all. Purposely because of the background I came from. Okay, we are not poor, but we are not rich. We are not average. I don't know how to put it. I don't know the kind of adjective I can use to qualify the family I came from. So actually, I was looking for a man that is, working already, that will support me, will support my family. So when the issue of getting married to a priest came up, I started crying. I was going from one mountain to another. Jesus, let this cup pass over me. I don't want to marry a priest. My my brother told me, I saw a vision. I saw you in the yard. I saw you teaching this. I said, God forbid. Every plan that I should go to the ministry. I was just praying against this thing. So one day, one of my father in the Lord now called me and said, Madam, calm down. Calm down. Why not just, why not just pray to God and hear what God is saying concerning the issue? I said, okay, no problem, Daddy. I started praying. I said, okay, God, if it is your will, God, but you know what I really want. God, please, that is what we should do. But since my father in the Lord said I should pray, God, please, as in, I was just giving God different kind of, how will I put it?
Conditions.
Options. Yes, that I don't want to go to ministry because I know that even that my father in the Lord, his wife is the one that will do everything at home, No, he's not collecting anything. So I said, I don't think I can fit into that particular place, because how will I be working and I'll be using my money to feed a man? That was the kind of mentality I had then. Okay, so after different persuasion and praying, and I received the conviction from God that I should go ahead. So here I am, inside the yard.
Interesting. We will come there eventually. Now, when I asked these questions, yes, the first question was personal to you, but subsequently, you are a representative, okay, of the wives of pastors. So your response doesn't necessarily have to be personal. So, for example, when I ask, how has the work of ministry affected the family? It doesn't have to be your family. Are you getting it? So, but you can say because I want us to hear both sides. I know there will be positive. I know there will be negative. That's the whole idea behind this. All right. It's because, some pastors could be listening to us now who are on the wrong trajectory and they're not aware. All right. So what impact, it doesn't have to be your personal story. I like to hear the positive first and then the negative so that we can be aware. How has this being a pastor's wife, has it affected the family, or how does it affect the family? Anybody?
Okay, I think I would like to quickly share my point because this is personal and I don't mind sharing it because it's good to be vulnerable sometimes. Now, I wish that I had learned like what I know today, and God is helping me to use that to mentor the young pastors' wives today. I wish I had known that when we ventured. Don't forget what I said when I started that. I was coming from a different background. I've not been in the Christian fold. I really didn't have any idea about how Christianity runs or what takes place in the church. So when we started, and then we just started, very young couple. I had maybe by the time my first child was just about a year plus when my husband was on the altar called as a minister. By the time he was called to pastor, my children were still in, the primary school age. I would say that one of the major impacts that ministry had in our family was the children. The fact that I don't know if it happens in other denominations, other churches, where because you're a pastor's child, you just lose the fact that they don't just allow the children be children. I don't think I shouldn't say stigmatized, but when children are children, because you're a pastor's child, they single you out. They take things like, oh, and you call yourself a pastor's child. Oh, why do you dress like this? Or for instance, my first child, because she was attending, at that time, she was already in the uni, and she was attending a university where they were not, you can go to service without covering your hair. But she was coming from a denomination where we cover our hair. And so she would come to church, and we were okay with that she could come to church with her hair covered. But she was bullied. She was, people would just talk to her. Why did you come? Well, in fact, there was a particular day one elder just met her and took a scarf from somewhere and just wrapped it around her head. And honestly, it took God, and it took a lot of prayers to keep that young lady in church. In fact, at the time, I remember one day she said to me, and I never knew that was getting to her. You know how it is, the denomination where we are, everybody calls us mommy, like mommy. And one day she would tell me, Mommy, am I really your first child? And I'm like, of course you. And she would say something like, the way they even call you mommy, like they own you. So for me, I didn't know that in the eye of that child, I was giving so much. Don't forget what I said, because I found this love. I just gave my all. I was, yes, parenting, but I was not doing it intentionally. And she said to me, by the time she was an adult, like a young adult, she said, it's going to take a long time for me to forgive the church because the church took my parents away from me. Now it's a different, now a big woman, but she was saying it from her heart. So we had to have a deep talk. We had to sit down to talk. But let me share one very personal thing before I end so that other people can see. There was a time, it was a visiting time. We're supposed to she was in the secondary school to visit her in school. And of course, my husband was given to service. And there was this very important workers or ministers meeting or whatever. And we were meant to visit. We normally would go together. But her dad could not go on that day. This girl had it on her mind and she kept it for years. And one day she said, Because of church, my dad did not come to see me, and I was looking forward to see him. So that's, the impact on the children, to be able to manage that aspect is something that is so dear to my heart today because of my experience. Thank God that I was able to walk around it, and now we talk about it. We are healed, they are healed, but it is very critical. And I use that to mentor other young pastors' wives coming up today.
Thank you, Ma. You've taken me to a place I wanted to go much later, but let's stay there. Now, the question is, what is the counsel to the pastor's wife who is probably listening to us now and is facing this exact same challenge? I mean, my kids have the same challenge. They will come to me and say, Daddy, I don't care whatever they call you, but you're my dad. All right. So how do you deal with this? How do we protect the pastor's children from these overzealous, people? So what do we do differently? How can we give our children an opportunity to have a resemblance of normalcy? All right, in spite of the fact that their parents are, prominent in the church setting. Anybody?
I think that the onus is on the pastor to do that. Because people will always be overzealous. I can identify with what you have shared, and I can identify with what my sister Omomi Agumbiade has also shared. I mentor pastors' wives. I have a forum where I, work with pastors' wives, and my ears are full of stories. I can share mine as well. I think it is the pastor that has the responsibility to ensure that his family is protected. When you put the rules or the guidelines in place, then the congregation will not cross that line. But I think the issue or the problem is that a lot of pastors get carried away with all the accolades, with all the attention, with all the, daddy, it validates a lot of our men, particularly in this part of the world. And so they get carried away with it so much so that they completely forget that there is a family to attend to. They completely forget, disregard the fact that, look, this is affecting my family. Some pay attention to their wives, a very small percentage, but a lot of them, completely forget that whatever it is that I'm doing affects my family, and I have to ensure or protect my family, whether it is for you to say to your congregation, don't, when it comes to my children, they are very precious to me. And so this is what I would love to see you do with my children. Don't do A, B, C. I respect you. I love you, but my family is very important to me. That is one, a pastor can do that. But I think also the mission at large, every mission, if we want to use the word denomination, fine, but every mission has a responsibility to teach the congregation. Our congregation members are not aware. We idolize pastors to the detriment of their families, to the detriment of their wives. The pastor, a popular way we say it, and this has happened several times, when it is Christmas or when it is, New Year or any festive period, you see members of the church come with presents for the pastor. They give the pastor the fabric, whether it is a brocade or Ankara or whatever. And then they give the pastor's wife soap that she'll be using to wash the Ankara that they have given to the pastor. There's so much disparity. And it's like, I don't know whether to say it is deliberate or it's an absolute disregard. A lot of our congregation members don't understand that the pastor's wife is the pastor to the pastor. Just like the way you have it in the military. where a general, a major general, you know, the wife of a general is a senior general. That's what they say in the military, because they are the only ones who can command the general. So a lot of congregation members don't realize that the pastor's wife is, no matter what he preaches in church, even if fire is coming out of his mouth, if he has not received the validation of his wife at home, you can commend him from now till kingdom come, until his wife says, oh, my dear, you did very well. That message was on point. This is what I took from it. That is when the man has peace. But when that is not there, you know, I mean, no congregation member can substitute for your family. No congregation member is supposed to take the place of your family or your wife in particular. Let me just stop there so I can allow others to speak.
Yes, I don't know if Mr. Begunde and Mr. Derrinde want to add to this. What do we tell the pastor's wife in balancing so that the children do not end up? I was at a meeting not too long ago, and the preacher said that he went to a school, a mission school, and a particular class, majority of them were pastors' children. And he asked them, how many of you would like to be pastors? And God forbid, God forbid, God forbid. All right. So, what can we add to this conversation? How can we protect the pastor's kid? Let's face it, it's easier said than done, because, the pastor will come and preach, and everybody will expect that, himself, his wife, and his family should be the first embodiment or representation of his powerful sermons, okay? Unless, of course, so let me hear you out. I wanted to add, but let me just hear you. I don't know, Mr. Derrinde, either of you, please take a stab at this.
Okay. Oh. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to add to what my mommies has said earlier. I think I have this issue. It happens to me. Okay, because in our own church, we don't call our members congregation, we call them laity. In Anglican church, we call them laity. Okay, so there is this particular day, my firstborn, she's just 5 years, and during rainy season, she always have this runny nose. So one day, during this raining period, so I wore one gown with pop socks for that girl. So one of the lady said, she was talking to my 5-year-old daughter. Pastor. She's saying that look at the way you dress. You are wearing pop socks to church, and you call yourself a pastor's daughter. So children sometimes can be so funny. So she came. She said, "Mommy, this is what Mrs. So said." I said, "Okay, don't worry." When we got home, I called her. I made sure I built up her self-esteem. That was what I did. I said, anybody should not talk you down. And another time, she repeated that same thing again. That was when my husband took it up and said, I'm a pastor. Are you now saying because she's a pastor's daughter? Are you now saying they are not human beings? We have this kind of members, this kind of lady that they believe that, and this particular woman, you needed to see what her daughter is putting on to church. Even the adults, our last born, they put on armlets at times, bomb shots like that to church. But one thing I want to say is that we should make sure we build up their self-esteem. Nobody should talk them down. Let them know that they are human. Let them realize that they should be able to defend themselves anywhere they find themselves. So that is what I want to add, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Begunde.
Okay, sir. Thank you, mommies, for Those contributions, they are awesome. I just want to add this little thing that the devil will always bring distraction. For me, all of these comments are distraction. And one thing my mentor will always say is, you open one eyes and you close the other. You open one ear and you close the other. Just remain focused. There are so many things that will be said about your family, so many things, so many comments here and there. But because of the focus, and because you yourself, you have a very strong self-esteem, like my sister said, this would help the pastor's wife to do what? To encourage the children and to ensure that they don't also lose focus. Because the family all together has an assignment. Everybody looks up to the family. Everybody looks up to the daughters. Everybody looks up to the pastor's children. Everybody looks up to the pastor's wife. If we allow these distractions to sow the seed of bitterness, then will not be the true model that God really wants us to be. It is well with us in Jesus' name.
Amen.
You, sir.
Amen. Thank you very much. If you are just joining us, just a quick one, man. This is the Pastors Roundtable. We'd like to say we have life-giving conversations that edify and glorify the Lord. So please, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Somebody says, how do I relate with those that are older than me in church? They see me as a small lady because of my stature. Truth is, whether small or big, the pastor's wife herself is under a microscope. Under a microscope. What you wear, what you didn't wear, how you spoke, how you didn't speak, etc., etc., etc. How do you cope with the intense scrutiny? All right? How do you cope with the intense scrutiny as a pastor's wife? Yes, I'm listening.
Pastor Noruwa,
Ma?
I wanted to add something
to... Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, man. Then you can take this question. Go ahead.
So I said that so it doesn't look like we're just looking at, because when you ask the question, the impact, so we can have a negative and we can have a positive. So for me, on the children themselves, we also look the positive. And it may sound a bit very funny. I remember the day one of my daughters mentioned it. I came back from church and we were, taking out some things from the car. We've had some, like I say, I can be vulnerable. We all go through temptation. Trials. You go through financial trials. You go through situation in the family. And they can see God come through for you. Now, they can see come through for you through the people that you serve. So, for instance, the kind of challenge that we had, it was so huge that it affected the whole family. And right before the children, they could see how the people we serve came together to supported and did all that they had to do. And it seems like we never went through that trial, that challenge. Wow. And I remember my daughter said to me, we're coming back from church, and said, Mommy, the truth is, there is nothing the devil can do. My husband is going to be a pastor, and I'm going to be a pastor's wife. Because the way God is blessing you people like this, it pays to serve God. So I think we look at the negative. And the moment she said that, it was like a joke, but in my heart, I just say, Father, thank you. Thank you that there's something they can see that says it pays to serve, even in what we're doing. So I just wanted to quickly add
Thank you so much, Ma, for that balance. So like I was asking, somebody's asking a question here that, they see me as a small lady because of my stature. So I'm asking, I know that the pastor's wife is under intense scrutiny, all right? From the dressing to the speaking to the name it, all right? How do you cope under this, microscopic, focus? What can you tell the pastor's wife? How can she, Mrs. Odere in this book about encouraging the children? How do you encourage yourself? How do you keep up, not minding that? And sometimes you may never quite measure up. You know what I mean? Because there'll be somebody in church who is taller than you, shorter than you, lighter than you, darker than you, name it. All right? So how do you cope?
Well, I would say just be yourself,
Mm.
period. Be yourself. As long as God is happy with you, as long as you have peace with your husband, every other noise is the noise of the market. That is my conclusion. Be yourself. Don't try to fit into anybody else's mold, no matter the pressure. Don't try to fit into anybody else's mold, because you will just be frustrated. You'll be frustrated, you'll be depressed, and you'll never feel, you'll never feel good about yourself. You won't have a good self-esteem. So be yourself through and through. Don't try to be like anybody else. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, don't try to compete with anybody. Just be yourself. My counsel.
Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say that I remember, I think it was Miles Moreau that said that, yes, okay. Pastor Oyedepo mentioned something that only fools without proofs. When we serve and there is a call upon your life, it goes beyond your size, it goes beyond, in fact, we know of pastors' wives that they could actually have language interference. But when you stay in that position with your gift, and your gift is backed with evidences and results, there's no way you will be intimidated. Just like you mentioned, sir, you find that even in the church where we serve, there are a lot of women that you can find there, other women that in their mind, they may be thinking, what does this woman have? What does she qualify to be a mom in the position that she is? But because the gifting that you have, once we are able to stay in that place where God can build us up and we begin to carry results. I mean, people will come to you and they say, I have this problem. And you pray. Even before they come to pray, you've already received it. And then you tell the person, this is what is happening to you. No shortness will be seen, no smallness will be seen, because in that small package, power is flowing. So I think if we can build ourselves and say, God, what have you called me to do here? What am I doing as I'm serving, as I'm supporting my husband? Whatever, you may not even be carrying the microphone. You could even be in intercessory prayer. All I would advise is identify your ministry, identify what you have, and as you do it, there's no intimidation, because you're working, you're serving. They are the ones that will come and meet you and they won't see any limitation that you carry. So you just live a limitless life as a woman of.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes. Please go ahead. Mrs. Abegudo, you can unmute. Mrs. Oderinde, you can unmute. How do you cope with the laity when they judge you, whether rightly or wrongly? Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay, for me, I read a book, and the book says you are more than the pastor's wife. There is a foot.
Oh, the line is breaking.
But she's having an issue, yeah.
Yes, the line is breaking.
Footnote that says supporting your, and then the very first thing the purpose. Going back to that actually helped me a lot, because I got married at a very early stage, and I was so young, and I have elderly people asking these questions. I was in my early 20s. But one thing I always pray for every morning for the day, just like Solomon prayed in 1 Kings. He said, give me wisdom and the grace to go in and out in the presence of just a container. The
link is not stable.
But
the age is just a number. What really matters is the content. I'm saying I actually pray for it every day. Okay.
Yes, let's put off your video and see if it will make it a bit better. Yeah, go ahead now. Let's see. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I discovered that the size is just a container, and the age is just a number. Every day I pray, Lord, wisdom for the day, wisdom part time. And sincerely, that's just it for me. And such that whenever you open your mouth, the Lord feels it. Whenever anybody asks you for counsel or for whatever, you are able to speak life. And when you speak life, everybody will forget about the side. Makes you the mother in Israel and the mother to everyone is that which you carry. And that's what God wants you to represent him. It's Jehovah El Shaddai. And that's the name of God that also has the characteristics of a woman, of a mother, the all-breasted God, the all-sufficient God. So I want to admonish the person asking that question that she should ask for more of God, more of his presence, more of his grace, much more wisdom of the ageless. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. You are more than a pastor's wife. Be yourself. And once you stay in your office and you minister effectively, shape and size become irrelevant. That's what I'm hearing. Wonderful. Mr. Derek, do you want to add to this?
Yes. I want to add to what my mommies has said earlier on. One thing I just want to tell the person is remain focused. That's the first thing. Remain focused. There is a reason why you are called to join your husband in that ministry. Some of them, they are jealous. They want to be in your position. They want to wear your beautiful shoe. They want to sit down in front. That is Mrs. Lagbaja. That is our pastor's wife. So you have to remain focused. Remain focused. And don't be too available. That is one thing. Don't be too available. Because this our lady, okay, let me use member. They are funny at times. Maybe there is one party or one gathering, even if they invite you. It's not all parties that you go. Maybe they see you often. They see you in every gathering. That's my own perspective towards that. Maybe you are always available. We have one gathering. Mrs. So she will be available. She will come. She does not have work. Because I want to tell you that don't allow anybody to disvalue you. Don't allow anybody to put you down, to demoralize you. So you have to stay focused. Don't be too available. Carry yourself. The way you carry yourself matter most. I think, how will I put it? I also have a very small stature. Sorry, me, I want to go, how will I put it? Physically now. Okay. So, because I have small stature, if I put on flat shoe, I will be too small. So one thing I do is every Sunday I put on heel. So my art self, when you see my art, before you look down on me, you will say, I'm a lot for you. Your brain will tell you that, hey, be careful. You understand? So the way you carry yourself, it matters most. So don't dress as if because I'm small. And there are some how will I put it? There are some pastor's wife or clergy wife. If that person belongs to Anglican, because they are small, they will not go and put on one kelebe clothes like this, the kind of clothes that they will put on, and you say, is it because you are small? How would they, even if somebody see you, they'll say, this secondary school girl. So put on, let your clothes, let it alley. You understand? Let them see you and see the glory of God in you. So that's my contribution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Interesting perspectives. Something to do with the packaging. All right. So we know that for some of us, pastors, combine both ministry and I don't like the word secular. Secular means minus God. I don't think anybody should do anything that's minus God. So I'd rather use the word business, okay? So you're in ministry, you're in business, you have a career, and oftentimes what I have found is that whereas the pastor can be queried in ministry. He can be queried in business. In the family, he's the boss. Are you getting it? So unless the pastor is deliberate, what happens is that family becomes maybe number 4, number 5, number 6 in the pecking order. All right? Because you see, that is the one place where it's difficult for him to be queried. You know, in ministry, unless he's the GO of his church, he can be queried. In his business, even if he owns the business, if he doesn't do it well, money will not come. So the fact that he may lose money can query him. So I'm asking, how do you ensure that your husband is not lost? All right? He's not lost to ministry combined with business and all those things that pull them away. How do you make time for your relationship despite the demands of ministry and career or business? What would you advise?
In my own opinion, I think being deliberate is the key factor, the key word or the answer to that. If you are not deliberate, you just do things randomly, then you would lose out on family most of the time. In fact, a man doesn't have to be in ministry to be deliberate about his relationship, or even a woman. You know, you have to schedule it. I think it was Miles Monroe that also said this. He said, if there is a funeral, or if a member is, no, he said, if a member is sick and my wife needs my attention, then that member, the member's family should get ready for a funeral. Because if my wife needs my attention, or my family needs my attention, I would give that attention to my family. I will not go to the member. But you see, the reverse is always the case for a lot of pastors. Mm-hmm. They feel that they owe the members, you know, it's my job. And, you know, one thing he said, which I still hold on to dearly, is that Jesus is the husband of the church. And so if you leave your own bride, or he says the bride, the church is the bride of Jesus. The church is not your bride, pastor. The church is not your bride. The church is the bride of Jesus. If you leave your own bride and you are paying too much attention to the bride of Jesus, you are committing adultery. That's the bride of Jesus. Face your own bride. Let Jesus look after his own bride. Your work is to shepherd. You are not supposed to carry somebody else's bride and, you know, be there for somebody else's bride 24/7, which is what some pastors do, and they completely neglect their own bride. And so finding that balance between being a shepherd and being the husband to the church, you know, which you are not supposed to be, is what a lot of pastors don't have. And if, you know, we want to go by Miles Monroe's word, then a lot of pastors are committing adultery, in quotes, because they are spending more time with the bride of Christ than with their own family, or with their own bride, sorry. So schedule it. You know, don't continue to work on empty. Pay attention to your family. Have a schedule. Maybe from the beginning of the year, this is where I'm going to take my leave. And when church programs come, be kind enough to, you know, take permission and say, sorry, I have scheduled it. I have to be with my family. A lot of churches, a lot of missions, even when there are bank holidays or public holidays or, you know, festive periods, they still put programs during those periods, and they don't let pastors spend time with their families. And so are we building homes or we're destroying homes? So if you are not intentional, if you don't, you know, take time to do it and stick to it, then it will not happen.
Just one more person on this, and then we'll move to my next question. Anybody wants to just, this delicate balance, how do you ensure that the home, doesn't suffer because of ministry, and ministry doesn't suffer because of the home? It's a delicate balance. Anybody else wants to add to that?
Okay, I would want to say that because of those who are joining in, because I'm sure we would have quite younger pastors' wives joining live. One of the things that we used to do while I was younger, and sometimes you just do these things and you do not know that is leaving that print in the hearts of the children. My last baby, who was, of course, is an adult today, she's 23, she's going to be 23. And she just said, "Oh, mommy, I miss those days that every Sunday after service, we used to go out to the eatery." We just started, and it was just like Pastor Debola was saying, that intentionality, that being deliberate to say, look, we need our time together. And, we were so used to it that going to church for the children, even if they feel like they're not going to church, once they remember that there's that outing, yes, oh yeah, we're going to church. So it was a time to bond together. Every Sunday we pick, where are we eating out today? Where are we going? So we could think about things like that. Now I'm talking about the children, where you're together, because of that, the pastor will deliberately, because we're all waiting most of the time, like pastors, you're doing one counseling or the other, they are waiting for you. And with that, you are able to plan yourself, just like Pastor Debola said. I say, look, I have to be done with counseling by 12 or by 1 because I'm going out with my family. So we can plan that. And then secondly, just like we do with the children, this specifically is because we know that a lot of pastors' wives, from those that I've had to counsel and coach and all that, they feel left out. I think Pastor Debola mentioned something like that, where the pastor is just fully into ministry. And even recently in the mission where I am, there was a letter that was sent out to pastors to tell them, look, carry your wife along. Because sometimes, for instance, if as a pastor, and this, if we have women who would have joined in here, maybe men are here. If as a woman, you're feeling left out, sit with your husband and talk to him. So one of the things that I do, like I say, I will talk about my own self. Whenever my husband maybe has a missionary trip to make, maybe he has to go to one country or the other, we go together, we plan it together. So maybe the trip is supposed to be for 5 days. We could have our trip for 10 days. So after that 5 days, the remaining 5 days is for ourselves. So this is how you just, while you're doing ministry, you're actually putting in all those other things to cover up and then create that bonding that is required for the family.
Thank you very much. How can you best support your husband? I mean, if you were to tick off your fingers, what would you consider to be the most important support that a pastor would want from the spouse?
A pastor's wife.
Yes, a pastor's wife would want, I mean, in other words, a pastor, what kind of support can a pastor's wife give to the pastor such that the pastor can be as effective as it can be in ministry? Yeah, please go ahead, ma. Anybody can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I would say that one of our responsibilities, just like we know as women, we are there to help. We're helpers. And there's this gifting that we all know women have. Most of the time we see beyond. And we know this man, okay, this is my husband, he's called into this ministry, or this is what he's supposed to be doing. We see them first. We see them much more than even the congregation will see them. So I think that as pastors' wives, one of the things we need to do, and I would want to say here, I'm using myself as an example too, is even when you're going to, so for instance, if you see that your husband is not, one of the things I do, because I'm a teacher, I'm called to teach. My husband also is a teacher. So I'm able to, I know sometimes he will tell me, hey, you are scrutinizing again. What did I say wrong? We can say, sit, once you, one of the things I know my husband used to struggle with when he started ministries. Once he starts teaching, he just goes off, like he's supposed to be for 30 minutes and he was like, I'm closing, finally we'll be closet 1, closet 2, closet 3. So I'm always like the timekeeper. And I remember then when we started in Shogule, I always will just stand up because I know the church is complaining and he knows it's not right. They tell, whenever we have questionnaire, people will write there and said, one of the problems we have is that we close late. And I will say to him, so I found out that initially I was not handling it well because the way I say it to him. So as pastor's wife, we need to learn how to, in quotes, correct our spouses, who of course they are our pastors. So what I do is I will just tell him, this is going to be the sign I will give you. The moment I stand up, it's time up. And it worked. At the time, he would even report and say, my wife, she's up, it's time up. So once we were able to understand our husband, where you're supposed to help. Sometimes people will come to church and tell you, in the church, you are the one that would hear about it. Oh, the pastor said something, or the pastor talked about me, said something in the church that I didn't like. We shouldn't join them to bring down the pastor, but rather we'll look at how we're going to sit with our pastor, our husband, to discuss this issue. Sometimes we may take it into prayers. So when you know that your husband is having challenges, I know of a pastor's wife that came to meet me because her husband was having issues with correcting people in church, even the workers. And it was an embarrassment to her, and she didn't know how to handle it. And I said to her, rather than nagging and just talking down at your husband, you need to also go take it into prayer. So it's all, all encompassing. While you take care of it spiritually, physically also, you can look at some creative ways to support your husband in those areas where he needs strength.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Abegunde, Mrs. Aderinde, how have you been and how do you think you can support your husband in ministry?
Okay, sir. For me, just like mommy said, the place of prayer, intercession, you pray for your husband. And number 2, there was a day I asked my husband myself, what do you want me to do? And he told me, okay, while I'm out there, you should keep the home. When I come into this house, I shouldn't come into the house and we are still handling counseling. I shouldn't come into the house and I have someone sitting by you. We should have the home, the environment, like in the house. We shouldn't carry church into the house. And number 3 is the place of evaluation. Yeah, the best person to evaluate is someone, to evaluate, his attitude. And that's the backyard ministry, the backyard assignment. And the place of intimacy too, because of it needs you as an emotional support. The pressure is always there. It needs someone to talk to. It needs someone to pour. So the wife should be available. Most times the pastors are always looking for their wives because sometimes there are wives that also want to do one thing or the other, also want to be relevant and the likes. But the very first way to be a suitable helpmate is to help him in his own assignment. So the place of emotional intimacy too, because ministry is emotionally draining. It's draining. Most of the times it thinks alone, thinks about, you should be his confidant. You should be able to share anything whatsoever. And the place of women coming around, your husband should trust you enough to hand over certain assignments to you, to at least to help him with the gender side of with the ones that pertains to the female, the female ministry. And finally, for me, I would say taking care of the children. He's out there doing so many things. The woman too should not be out there and it will look like we are competing with him. At least the home front.
Thank you.
Should be well taken care of. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes. Mr. Aderinde, you want to add to that? Hello,
Yes,
ma.
I want to add to that.
Yes,
I want
quickly.
to add to what my mommies have said. Okay, I think personally, the first issue I had was that because from the church he was posted, when he started his ministry, he would just be given 5 minutes to teach his sermon. And the first time I sat under his ministration, I was like, 5 minutes, no explanation, nothing. How come? I did not get anything. No. If me as your wife did not gain anything. So it means all the congregation, all the natives did not gain anything. Okay, so I started working because for him to sit down, another problem he has, for him to sit down and start writing sermon is another thing. I said, okay, what do you want me to do? Let me help you. So by the time he writes the sermon, I'll say, okay, I'm your congregation now. Oh yeah, preach the sermon to me. Before you go outside and go and preach. You know, members are so funny. When you say A, that A that you say, hey, they will turn it to so many things. So So I would tell him that I want you to be well grounded. Well grounded. When you preach, back it up with different scriptures. So I was able to help him in that area. So that's my contribution, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma, your hand is up. Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring balance to some of the things that I have heard that have been said on the platform, particularly when my sister Abegunde shared, and she talked about the home front, the pastor's wife taking charge of the home front while the man is out there. As an older pastor's wife now, with grown children who are grown up and now with grandchildren, you know, one of the things that I want to say is that, and I think my sister Omomi Agunbiade also shared this, we have to be careful, you know, when we give our pastors or our husbands that leeway to, you know, you go do the work of ministry and I'll take care of the home front. When your children get older, they will not appreciate the fact that their father was never available. So in looking after the home front, we have to balance it. We have to ensure that, yes, you're looking after the home front, but don't encourage your husband, pastor husband, to be away such that he's not in the shadow. There are times that, you know, things have to be done in school. Don't be the one going all the time. Even if he has to go once in a term or once in 2 terms, make sure he's attending. If there are important occasions, don't let it, if it clashes with church program, then, you know, on occasion, he has to let go of church program and attend. If you keep the home front all of the time and your children grow up like that, trust me, the experience of Pastor Omaumi's children, and it's the same thing I have experienced, where children are upset that their father did not attend one program they had in school, or maybe it was a hospital admission or whatever, because they had to do something in church, and they find it difficult to forgive their fathers, you know, at the end of the day, will be the order of the day. So we have to balance it and be careful. That's just what I want.
Thank you very much, ma. Thank you. Now, what is your advice to the wife whose husband, the pastor, is being, you know, infidelity, drug use, etc., etc.? What does she do?
Speak up. If your husband is committing adultery, if your husband is, you know, doing all sorts of things that are untoward, that are not of God, look for a good confidant. Of course, you would pray about it. You would have prayed for him and all of that, but don't hide it. You know, I'm quick to respond to this because I have seen too many, and we've heard of too many on social media, in the news, we've read about it, and it continues to happen. Domestic violence, perversion, husband committing adultery and still coming to the pulpit to minister. We need to be bold to speak up. And one of the reasons a lot of pastors' wives don't speak up is because they are always accused. Number one, they're afraid of laity or congregation members, as we call them. You know, they're afraid because the congregation members or the laity have idolized the pastor to the point where they don't see he cannot do anything wrong. And so you, the wife, coming to say, look, this is what my husband is doing. He's like, how dare you talk about our pastor like that? You want to destroy his ministry. You are the witch. There's something wrong with you. And so they shut their mouth. And this man continues to get away with murder. And at the end of the day, everything blows up. The woman gets to be blamed. If they are still alive, that is, you know, and if the whole marriage is not destroyed, it becomes bad news. It becomes a stigma to the church. And so it is important that we speak up and we seek help as soon as possible. You can't handle it alone. So speak up. Speak up. I mean, when you say don't spoil the man's ministry, that ministry, so you are not the one that is spoiling it. If a man has gone into perversion, adultery, and all of that, the ministry is already non-existent. It can only take God's grace and forgiveness if the man repents. So that's what we have to ensure. And you are not going to just throw him out, if you know what I mean. You are going to seek help. It's like, honey, let us seek help. But of course, most men who are like that, they will just say, no, what is your problem? You know? And so many things are happening that should not even be had in our midst, even up to incest between pastors and their children. And so you can't hide those things.
Well, you know, sometimes I think that maybe the challenge is, you know, we say we are soldiers of Christ, all right? If we use the military as an example, when a soldier is injured, they take him to the hospital, yes? So maybe one of the challenges that we need to deal with is, where are the hospitals to take wounded pastors to? It's not a question for us to answer here, but it's something to think about. If there was a place where we could take wounded pastors to, where they can get healed and, you know, restored or returned back, it might be easier for, you know, the wives to speak up. But anyway, those are my thoughts. I don't know if anybody else wants to add. What do you do to the husband who's been, you know, infidelity, drug abuse, cults, you know, in the quest for power, you know, your husband is adding things to the anointing. What do you do if you are, you know, how do you advise the wife of such a pastor? Where does she go? What does she do? Yes, anybody wants to? After that, I have one more question and we'll begin to wrap this up. Yes. Mr. Agumbe, go ahead, man. I can hear you.
I concur with everything Pastor Debola said. Sorosoke, loud, without really, how do I put that English word now? You are not actually destroying the man, knowing that you are there to help him. So that's exactly what she had said. Look for a way to really help him to get the therapy that is needed. If he's wounded, to be healed, but don't keep quiet. Because at the end of the day, even you that you are keeping quiet, you are going to be a victim of whatever it is that is going through. So Sorosoke loud. That's all.
Thank you very much. Yes. Mrs. Abegunde, Mr. Derinde.
Okay, I just want to add that every pastor has a pastor. Every pastor also has someone he submits to. Before it even graduates to something, you know, to that elaborate action, to that so big, you know, addiction or whatever. When the woman starts observing that, okay, this is happening gradually, just like our mommies have actually mentioned that such a woman should speak up. So the pastor that this particular pastor submits to should be informed on time before it gets out of hand, so that there will be early, early therapy, early healing process, whatever could be done earlier before it gets out of hand. That's my contribution, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Derinde.
Okay, so my own contribution, as all my mummies have said earlier on, okay. Continue to go okay. Like in my own diocese now, anybody that is coming from theology school and you have been posted to our diocese, you will go to psychiatric for different tests. So it is after they have confirmed you that you are okay emotionally that you will be accepted into our diocese. And I can say that since that day, in fact, I don't know, maybe people are hiding, I don't know, but I've not heard about such. But in a situation whereby someone is facing or seeing some traces of that, was okay, you have to shout, tell people, to let people know that this is what is happening. Like me now, in fact, a pastor should fear someone. You should know the person your husband feared, that when you mention the name of that person like this, he will start frustrating. He will start saying, gosh, I know me. Please help me. So you have to learn to okay, like my mommy has said, so that at the end, it will not turn to another story. So that's my own contribution.
So a good thing to say here is that who does your pastor report to? Yes. In the event that your husband does not have anybody that, like you said, will make him afraid or cautious, I think that's a sign. It's like a car without brakes. It's only a matter of time. All right. I have one last question. Please listen carefully. It's a very interesting question. I myself, I don't know what the answer could be. The question is, what is the big elephant in the room that no one is talking about? What is the big elephant in the room that no one is talking about?
Domestic violence, emotional abuse between pastors and their wives.
Domestic violence, emotional abuse. Do you want to throw more light, Ma?
It's pretty straightforward. A lot of pastors' wives, from what I have seen, are getting, abused domestically and are being beaten by the pastors themselves. And they are keeping quiet. And then for some, it's not physical abuse. It is emotional abuse, because the man is a man of God. And so, he's become a mini God, and nobody questions, nobody queries. Some of these pastors, have junior pastors under them who are aware that this pastor is abusing his wife, or these pastors are abusing their wives, and they are not talking. It is not, it's not even limited to young pastors, even big pastors. Like big men of God are doing it, and they're getting away with it. And that is why we saw the case of Osinachi that made the news. I think it was earlier this year, or was it late last year? It's been happening. And nobody, is talking about it. Nobody is dealing with it. It happens and it is covered. It happens and it is covered, And so that abuse just has to stop. It just has to stop. Some pastors have separated quietly and they're still doing ministry, And I like what my sister said, Sister Derry, who said in her own mission, you must first go for psychiatric tests. Some of those pastors need to see the psychiatrist. It should be, it should be a routine thing. It should be the norm. They should check them that they are balanced before they start ministry. And then intermittently, not only the men, even their wives. We have to be sure that we are okay. So domestic abuse, as in physical abuse, is so bad. I've seen all sorts in my, many years of working with pastors' wives. It's like there's hardly a year that I don't see a pastor's wife come to say, this is what is happening to me, but I can't tell anyone.
Okay. Yes. Anybody else? What is it that we're not talking about? There's a big elephant in the room and nobody's talking about it. When it has to do with the pastor, his family. Yes, Mrs. Oderinde, go ahead.
Their sex life. Sex life. Nobody is talking about it. Sex life. That's what I want to mention, sir.
Okay. Funny enough, somebody just mentioned. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Some pastors are too busy. They are very, very busy that they neglect their wives. And there was a time that we had this program among the clergy wife in my diocese, and a 70 years woman was invited to speak to us, and she said, though I'm old, everybody look at me as grandma, I'm 70 years, but my husband is still having sex with me. And everybody were like, you're 70, to be. You understand? And immediately when that woman left, I remember that the bishop wife said something. He said, if you know that for the past 6 months, your husband did not touch you from 6 months upward, sir, Mars, you needed to see hands so up that their husband did not even touch them at all. And do you know the funniest part? Most of them, it's not that they don't have time. Some, they hide under, I don't have time. Meanwhile, they are admiring some of the deity. One issue happened. I'm not going to mention the dance. A priest left his wife, neglected his wife at home, and he was going to hotel to go and sleep with lady in that hotel. God was watching all throughout until one day he died in that hotel. And do you know the funniest part? You won't believe that, Igbo people, they have this, one of their culture is they believe that they should not bury their, how will I put it, their children outside. You won't believe that they were unable to carry his corpse to his village because they said, this is a taboo. This is a taboo. This is a taboo. And this sex life is killing most homes. Me in the church, when I feel like having sex, I will just tell my husband, okay, when we get home, I want to go to Jerusalem. If people are there, I want to go to Jerusalem. You understand? If you cannot say it, give it nickname. You can call it onions. Package it now. It's your husband. You don't have to be ashamed. So that sex life is really affecting, is eating up so many homes. Praise the Lord. I submit, sir.
Thank you very much. Somebody said pornography. It's another big thing. Well, we need to begin to round up. So maybe the last thing I want to say is, and I think it's good that we try to end up on a positive note. And that is to say that all said and done, all right, all said and done, there is none of these things that we've spoken about that, Christ doesn't have an answer to or an answer for. And I think that's very important. So anybody listening to us today, if you don't have a mentor, go and look for one. I think that's really key. If you cannot trust somebody within your system, look for somebody outside your system. All right. Yeah. If you're a pastor's wife, I want to recommend any of these people, ladies, pastors' wives that have shared with us tonight. As you can see, they've spoken from their hearts, and they've spoken, the truth, as it were. One thing is clear: nobody can run this race alone. All right, we need help. Okay, and is it tough? Yes, it is. But then the Bible says that where sin abounds, grace the more. All right. And so I think it's important to bear in mind that this is still a noble calling to be a pastor, to be a pastor's wife, to be the child of a pastor. It is still a noble calling. There are challenges, no doubt, but we've looked at some of the ways in which we can deal with them. All right. We've talked about prayer. We've talked about, the supportive role that a spouse can play. Now, I recognize that we have cases where the woman is the pastor and the man is the spouse. But because we don't have all the time, I needed to focus on what is more prevalent, all right, what is more common, which is, the man is the pastor and the woman is the wife. Somebody had asked the question about how about the case where, the woman is the spouse, the pastor, and the man is the spouse. Yes, maybe sometime in the future we will talk about that. But I want to thank our panelists, Mrs. Oderinde, Oluwafunke, Mrs. Omoumi Agumbiade, Mrs. Tewo Bade, did I get it? Begunde, Mrs. Debola Atoyebi. Thank you so much. And all those who joined us on YouTube, thank you so much. If this is your first time, my YouTube channel is called A Word in Season. And if you look through, I have some interesting, not just sermons, but teachings on relationships. And interestingly, I've done quite a few things on relationships recently. One of them that I like to talk about is getting married the second time. Okay, you are a widower, you are a widow, you are, for whatever reason, you find yourself wanting to go back into marriage. I put something out there that I think will be helpful to you. Next month, by the grace of God, we will be talking about LGBTQ2+. All right? They are already in church. Okay, so the question is, what do we do with and about them? Okay, I like this program because all I need to do is find the questions. I don't have to provide the answers. So next month, by the grace of God, we're going to be looking at LGBT. Okay, how do we relate with them? What do we do with them? One of the people that is coming to be a guest with me, thank you so much, ma. Thank you so much, ma. Thank you. She said to me that many years ago, a woman came to her and said, my husband, bats for the other side. That's how they say it in America. Okay, so we're talking about LGBT, what about positive impacts? Oh, yes, we've spoken about that. Somebody's asking what about positive impact. We've spoken about that. When we talk about the support that you can give, to your husband. We spoke about that, so yes. So that's what we're going to be talking about next month, by the grace of God. You can always come back and watch this. It will be on the channel. It will be there on the channel, and you can watch past editions of the Pastors Roundtable. Thank you so much, mummies, clergy. I hope you have enjoyed this time as much as I have. And thank you so much, everyone that joined us on YouTube. Thank you so much. Make it a date with us, by the grace of God. Next month, Wednesday, the 21st of June, if Jesus tarries, we'll be talking about LGBTQ2+. There are so many of them now. Who knows, by the time we're meeting, they may have added more dimensions. And what I always say is that the gospel is relevant. All right. In the time of Jesus, the gospel had an answer to everything that was happening at that time. It can be no less in our own time. All right. The gospel has an answer. And next month, by the grace of God, we'll be looking at it together. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope to see you again when we meet next month. Before we round up, finally, I don't know if you have one final word, very quickly. Please, my panelists, just very quickly, summarize your thoughts and leave us with something to take away.
Well, for me, I will just quote a scripture, and that is James 4:7. in everything that we have said, it says, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. So if we submit to God, whether as pastors' wives or as pastors, and we resist the enemy, he will flee from us, and we won't be having some of these, conversations about big elephants in the room and all of that. So I want to leave us with that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, I would say that
yes. Go ahead, ma'am.
We can get rest once we're able to, just like Pastor Debola said, submitting to God. But this is also coming from a personal experience. The Bible says, Jesus said it, come unto me, all ye that are that labor and are heavy, and I will give you rest. So once we were quick to go to him first, just like all we have talked about, before we start to talk about any other thing, once we learn to go to him first, then we can always find rest and peace. Because one of the things I wanted to mention when we're talking about the elephant in the room is that a lot of pastors' wives today, they're going through mental health challenges. And of course, it's related to what Pastor Debola mentioned. So if we can always constantly go back to him, we'll find rest for our souls.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Yes, Mrs. Abegunde, Mrs. Derinde, final word. Okay, Mr. Abegunde first, and then Mr. Derinde.
Okay, sir. I just want to drop this, that this assignment is a noble assignment. No one should be scared. Please don't be afraid of taking up this assignment. I've seen a lot of young women saying no, they can never marry a pastor. I want you to know, if you are hearing me and God is calling you to this assignment, he will never leave you nor forsake you. Just that, don't handle it on your own and seek for knowledge. When my people lack knowledge, they perish. Paraphrasing now, the scripture says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Let's seek for knowledge and let's seek God in everything. Don't handle anything from human experience. You are different from any other person. What happens to your bishop's wife will not happen to you. You are unique. To God on your knees and let him give you your customized rule of life for the assignment. God bless you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Derinde.
Okay, I'm going to quote this Bible verse, John chapter 10, verse 10, which says, hello?
Yeah, go ahead, but we can hear you.
Okay, John 10, verse 10, which says, the thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it as full. So my last word tonight is that, pastor's wife, guide and guard your home. Guide and guard your home. The devil is moving around. Side chicks are moving around. Home destroyers are moving around. Guide and guard your home. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think on that note, we can all just, leave it with the Lord. He would handle it. That's been my experience in my own walk with the Lord. Leave it with him. He will handle it. All right. There's no storm that is coming your way that God doesn't already have a solution and an answer to. I do not regret coming into ministry. It's been wonderful. Have there been challenges? Yes, there have been. But if I were to summarize my life, I would say God win.
Yeah. So,
all right. Thank you so much, everybody, and God bless you. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank you. Thank you. been a privilege having you.